guys, welcome back to Relatable Relationships. Today we are on with Kenny Vaughan from Texas, USA. Kenny is the founder and owner of Shields of Strength, which is an awesome company. You should definitely go check it out on social media, online, and go check out Kenny's Instagram as well. He is a super cool guy, has a lot of great content and stuff to say, super humble about his faith, and just an awesome Christian overall. So let's give Kenny a call and see how he's doing. Okay. All right. So I got it pulled up. Got the recording going now, and we can go right into the questions. So,
awesome.
First one to start off is, can you describe to our listeners who you are and what you do?
So, who I am, I guess, that's a great question. I guess the most important thing would just be that, I'm the husband of Tammy Vaughan, my wife, 26 years now. And then I have 3 children that are Faith, Grace, and Kennedy. And so getting to be their dad and my wife's husband is like by far the most important thing in my life, really. And then some people know that we make Shields of Strength, and my wife and I founded that about 25 years ago, which is just it's jewelry inscribed with scripture. And then some people know that I wrote the book, The Right Fight, How to Live a Loving Life, and that spent about half my life as an athlete trying to win a national championship. But I guess that's the kind of the Cliff Note version of who I am. And I guess I would add to that I spent a big portion of my life pretty much ruled by fear, just kind of going wherever it took me. And you wouldn't have known it if you knew me, but fear mostly ruled my life. And then Tammy started writing scripts on my equipment, and God's word started getting in my head and in my heart, and then I started learning to act on it, and then started overcoming my fear. And that was a major paradigm shift for me that changed everything in my life. And so that's how I ended up in the whole love mission that I've been. The word love is always is so ill-defined that I know that when I say that, sometimes I don't communicate well what I'm really trying to say. But that's how I end up spending so much time, as you've probably seen on social media, everything else, just trying to help people understand what love really is. So that's me. I'm the guy in the garage holding up the paper signs about love.
There you go. Very cool.
Yeah.
So how did you come to found like Shields of Strength, and what was the purpose behind that?
So I was a long distance ski jumper, of all things, and I was trying to win a national championship, and it's a long story, but 15, 20 years, and I eventually got to where the fear of failure was crippling me, so it wasn't really good for my potential when it mattered the most, because I was so afraid of losing again. Didn't tell anyone that. Amy, I was dating her at the time, and when she figured it out, she just, women have a way of figuring things out, whether you tell them or not. And so she started writing those scriptures on my equipment. And in the worst circumstances that I'd ever been in, with damaged equipment, with one jump remaining for me, I had to forfeit because I didn't have time to fix my equipment. I decided to just go with my torn up stuff. And I would have been more afraid than ever. I decided to act on God's word, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid. And I didn't know if I would win or not, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I ended up winning this nationals in a time that I would have been mostly useless.
Wow.
And so I didn't really understand. I was trying to understand, how did God's word make that much difference? Like, what is going on here? What? And I couldn't carry my equipment around. I wanted a daily reminder for life, for family, for business, everything else I did. And I decided to buy this dog tag at a surplus store, and I put the same scriptures on there. It was 2 Timothy 1:7 and Philippians 4:13. I had those engraved on each side, the actual scriptures, as a personal reminder, and gave some away and made more. And that was like 1997. So ended up making more so we could make them in bulk, so I could give them away easier and less expensive. And that was the beginning of Shields of Strength. So now, 25 years later, they became one of the most worn emblems by the United States military, the dog tags. That's all we did for about 10 years.
Wow.
The military, probably 4 million dog tags with scriptures on them. Then we branched off into making other pieces of jewelry, all with the same purpose, just trying to get a piece of God's word around someone's neck, hoping it could be for them, what Tammy had done for me. So that's how Shield of Strength got started.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah. Huh. It wasn't a plan at all. It was just one step at a time, and just trying to share with other people what God had done in our own lives, and it's been a very humbling, crazy journey that we're very grateful for.
Wow. I feel like that's how the Lord kind of works, though, right? Like, we can kind of try to forge our own pathway, but then as soon as we, give up whatever it is, whether it's like fear or, there could be so many things that like we're pushing for, but as soon as we give that up, like He takes us on a completely different pathway that we could have never imagined. Yeah,
and I say this often. I'm not sure. Sometimes I think I don't communicate as well as I should, but I often say, you can spend your whole life chasing what you want, and you'll never catch it. And that's kind of what I was doing for most of my life, was trying so bad. I wanted to win and catch my dream, and I was chasing it. And as a result, fear was ruling my life. So really, you can spend your whole life chasing what you want, and you're never going to catch it. But if you'll set that down and stop chasing it and start doing what you're doing for God and others, not for your dream, what you'll find is that what you desire most, or your dream, will actually chase you down. And so that's kind of what happened as an athlete, and surprisingly with Shields of Strength, I would say. So our goal is just to help people, we love God, we love people, and we're trying to help them.
Yep. That's really good. So you've mentioned a couple times, like, fear ruling your life. How would you say that, like, I guess you could say, like, how did it rule your life, but also, like, what are some other ways, or what are some ways you feel like fear could rule people's lives?
Well, so for me personally, I consider myself a fighter, just meaning that, I was willing to fight for anything I wanted. And so when I faced fear, my response was to fight it. And I think when we face fear, we only have one of two choices. And when I say fear, I just mean the fear that I can't achieve, the fear of what people are going to think of me, the fear of not getting what I want. It's just, it's unlimited, right? And
right.
Specifically for me, this fear of failing. So when we face fear, we have two choices. We either surrender to it, which means we become obedient to it. In my case, it would mean, and I did this more than once, the fear was enough that I quit. And, I never told anyone I quit because I was afraid. And I even tried to convince myself that I didn't quit because I was afraid.
Right.
I just quit because, hey, I'd done my best and it was time to move on, or whatever it was, Mm-hmm. So one way we obey fear is we obey it. We either quit or we become prideful. That's another way we obey fear. And I'm bigger than, I'm greater than. That's what I would call fighting fear. But whether I obey fear or I fight fear, in either case, fear gets my undivided attention, and then it begins to rule my life. So for me, I was mostly fighting fear, which meant when I felt afraid of failing again, my response was, in my own mind, in my own head, to love myself, to speak to myself that I'm the greatest, that nobody can beat me, that, there's nothing I can't overcome, to build myself up. And then what I found was that when I built myself up in a response to fear, I climbed a higher ladder. It was not stable, and that was me. So a bigger version of me didn't give me more stability, it gave me less. So I was more and more dependent on myself. And so when everything was all on top of me at once, so in this case, my dream was on the line, I had damaged equipment, like the one thing I felt I knew everything about, said that it would be impossible for me to achieve what I was there to do. But I believed in myself. And because I believed in myself, that meant it wasn't going to be possible. Like everything was coming undone. And that's how, as a skier, that's how I went through this process. And so whenever it mattered the most, I became the most undone. And then whenever I set myself aside, I set my dream aside, like in this moment when I said, never mind the gold medal, Lord. I just want to do the best I can for you. I realized I would do more for him than I would for my dream. And that I had a higher calling with no chance of failing, that if I finished for him, then that was good enough. Whether I had a medal or I didn't have a medal, what difference did that make, you know?
Right.
And so I'm often remember, but seek you first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. So I fought fear, and the more I fought it, the bigger it got. And then finally I learned that it's perfect love that drives out fear, and that fear is selfish. It's fighting for its dream. It's fighting for what it wants. It's fighting to be loved. And it's destroying its dream. It's destroying what it wants, and it's destroying love in its own life. Mm-hmm. That's because fear is selfish. It's me first. Love is selfless, which means never mind my dream. Never mind what I want. God, help me to be the best that I can be, not for me, but for you and for others. And when we do that, that's whenever we give our dreams an opportunity to chase us down instead of us trying to chase them down. And from that place, what I found was that when I should be most afraid, I wasn't. You know, for the first time in my life, fear wasn't ruling my life. And so it's perfect love that drives out fear. And love is selfless. And I think that's where we find the power in love. And when we start allowing this love to rule our lives, then God works in and through our lives to lead us where he wants us to be. And then when our dreams come true, instead of being proud and prideful and pounding our chest and looking at me at how great I knew I was, we're on our knees, you know, and we're just grateful and we're thankful. And now in that we actually touch and impact other lives through what we allow God to do in and through us. We lift other people up instead of lifting ourselves up and saying, look what I did, if that makes sense. So
yeah, for sure. So you'd say like fear tends to turn us into focusing on ourselves more so, and like love, like you're talking about, like the fear of God turns us from thinking not of ourselves but of other people and of what the Lord and what we can do for him. Would that be a good summary?
Yeah, that's right. So fear always looks out for itself, and normally without regard for others.
Right.
And love always looks out for others, and normally without regard for itself. That's right. Fear is selfish. Love is selfless.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And love is not, being selfless is not, so it's not permission to not try as hard.
Right.
You know, it's not permission to just kick back, you know, because, hey, I'm not playing to win anymore. It's a higher calling. Like, you know, I mean, whatever I would do for my dream or my goal or whatever it is I want to accomplish to be loved in life or whatever it is, if I really surrender myself and fight to live this loving life, it's not about me, it's about God and others. And I would say that your life is not about you. It's way bigger and it's way more important than that. It's about God and it's about others. So yes, fear is selfish and it slowly destroys itself, and love is selfless, and over time it builds us.
Very true. Okay, looking towards the relationship aspect, so you've talked a little bit about it with your wife Tammy and stuff. So anyone that follows you on social media knows like you're super passionate about sharing your faith in general and your wisdom, relationship-wise, faith-wise, your experiences. Relationships are obviously very important to you. So how did the Lord lead you into the marital realm as far as like you obviously battled fear for a while, and you said Tammy helped you out with that. So I know for a lot of people this has come up, because we've been married only, my husband and I, for the past year. People have talked to us like, how did you get to that point of feeling peace about moving forward with this one person that you're going to be spending the rest of your life with? So how would you put those two things together as far as like the fear and the love in that aspect, and how you finally made that step into the marital relationship?
All right. So to have a successful relationship, you need two loving people. If you have a loving person and a selfish person, it's not going to work. And if you have two selfish people, it's not going to work. So you need to, now I don't mean perfectly loving. I mean two people willing to love. Like no one is perfect in love. I mean, my wife and I have been married, I'm going to get in trouble because I don't remember if it's 25 or 26 years. I think it's 26, but we've been far from perfect in loving each other, but in the end, we choose to love each other. And so if you have a loving person and a selfish person, loving, if you're loving and I'm selfish, let's just say, what we have to understand is that you loving me, if I'm selfish, means never pretending it's okay for me to be selfish. Not so, or because me being selfish is not getting you loved. That's selfishness. Okay? The reason that you would, if you're a loving person, you won't allow me or enable me. We don't control other people, but we certainly control what we help them do or allow them to do to us. The reason you wouldn't want me to be selfish is because me being selfish ultimately is going to destroy me. And so if you really love me, you're going to say, Kenny, why do you think that's okay? Help me understand why you think that's okay. And if it's truly selfish, there's nothing I can do, nothing I can say that's rational or truth that will reveal to you or even to myself why it's justified. And so loving people don't enable people to abuse them or be selfish in a relationship. But if you have two loving people, what you have is you have two people that are selfish sometimes. But if one is selfish and the other is loving, then the loving person challenges the selfish person. Like, why'd you do that? What's that about? And if they were acting selfish, they're not truly selfish to their core. They were just acting selfish or being selfish because they were afraid of something or having a bad day or whatever it is. Then the person who made this selfish mistake is going to be quick, or at least fairly quick. I wasn't as quick as I'm quicker now than I used to be. It took me a while sometimes, but then they're just going to be, you're right and I'm sorry. Like, I was selfish. You're right, and I'm sorry, and they're going to get better. We're not going to turn it over overnight. We're spending a lifetime. We're permanently under construction, so we spend this lifetime getting better and better and better and better. But so does the relationship when you have two people who are willing to love. The problem in relationships, and so if you have that, you have these two people who are willing to love. They're humble. They're willing to admit when they're wrong. And continue to grow more and more loving, then love grows stronger over time. And so 26 years of marriage, you'll find yourself saying, I don't know how I can say this, but somehow, I love Tammy more than I've ever loved her. Like, love just keeps growing stronger in our relationship. But that comes from loving through hurt, because hurt keeps coming. We offend each other, we get mad at each other, all these different things come along, but we keep loving our way through it. When you know that when you try to make that work with one or two selfish people, and by selfish, we're all selfish sometimes, if people who are unwilling to humble themselves and to love, and they're so afraid, this is almost always rooted in fear, they're so afraid of not being loved, they're so afraid of loving and not being loved back, they're so afraid of what they're not going to get out of their relationship, they're so focused on what they're in the relationship to get instead of what they're in the relationship to give, that they destroy love in this relationship. So they're coming at you not for you. So if I'm this selfish person and we're in a relationship, then the reason that I'm coming to you about something you did wrong is not for you. It's for me. And if I'm doing that, then I'm not just killing the love in our relationship, I'm killing the love in my own life. I'm failing to love you. So love never pretends it's okay for someone else to be selfish. It just doesn't go to them for itself. It goes to them for them. So if you're trying to find if you have someone that this may work over time, a few just tips would be, how they may be treating you very loving right now because they want you to love them. That's not love at all. That's using love to get what you want. It's manipulation. So sometimes it's really hard to tell. That's why I think it's so important that we slow down, because it takes a while for the truth to kind of get flushed out, to really see somebody else inside out. Because everyone knows how to love to be loved. But that's not love, it's manipulation. One of the ways you can see it early on is just look at how they treat people that they were in a relationship with, that they're no longer in. And how do they treat people that if they did something for this person, the other person couldn't give anything back to them even if they wanted to? Do they love those people, or do they despise them, or do they totally dismiss them? Right. If they do, that's usually not a good sign. I mean, if somebody really loves you, they don't just love you, they're living a loving life, which means they're loving God and they're loving others. And if they seem to just love you and they hate everyone else, or they're indifferent to other people, eventually they're going to be indifferent to you. It won't be, but it probably won't be until they give to you and they don't get what they gave to get. Then they're going to reveal who they really are. Right. So, and we all do that. We all do that sometimes. But if they do that, are they truly repentant, and do they own it, and are they willing to try to start getting better? So. Right. Pay attention to what's going on, and our first responsibility is ourselves. Are we loving, or are we just here to see what we can get? So, healthy relationships are two mostly selfless people, or at least working to be that. And unhealthy relationships are one or more two selfish people who are there to love to be loved, to get what they want.
So would you say that a willingness to change in someone is the really important part? Because that was a huge part of why my husband was able to finally have peace about us getting engaged and then married, was because, we were working through things. Everybody goes through stuff in their relationship. Like you said, we're constantly under construction. But what actually gave him peace about it was that he saw in my own heart the willingness to change, to try to become a better person. Because like you said, we all have selfishness in us. Sometimes we can't ever truly get rid of the old nature, but that willingness to change, like, no, I want to work to become harder, to become a better person, not only for like myself, but for you and for the Lord.
Yeah, we absolutely have to be willing to change, and I would say, so then what makes someone willing to change? And I would think that it's a total surrender to Christ. I've never seen it. I'm 55, 56. I forgot how old I am. I just had a birthday, but anyway, it's like I've never seen radical, truly a tiger change his stripes without Christ, but I have seen it in those scenarios. And so we surrender, and we surrender to Christ and to His love and to truth. And then we come to understand how loved we are despite who we are, not because of who we are, but despite who we are. And then we realize that we're so grateful that we want to be the same. We want to love. And yes, that means we're willing to change. So what matters most, what should matter most to us is not our rights, but what is right. Not my truth, but the truth. And if I'm not willing to change, to become more like the truth, then I'm selfish. Because the truth is not just best for me, it's best for you and it's best for everyone.
Right.
And the truth doesn't belong to me and it doesn't belong to anyone else. Like the truth has always been and it will always be. And so if we're really selfless and fighting to live this loving life, I used to fight to be loved, and I was killing love in my life and in my relationships. And then I learned to start fighting to live a loving life, because it's a battle. So if we're really fighting to live this loving life and some truth comes before us that contradicts what we believe or contradicts what we're doing, then we are absolutely willing to change. It's not easy. It's gonna be brutal. Sometimes it takes sacrifice. It may be hard, but we're willing to admit that's the truth, and I want to be more like that and less like me. And so, yes, I'm willing to change. And man, like that is radical. That is so radical. Like, can't even explain to you. When you see that in someone, it's like, wow. Like everything could turn on a dime right here. And relationships can be built on that. But this idea of I'm looking at the truth, but I'm justifying what I want despite what the truth is, you can't fix that. Like no one can fix that except for the person who's justifying. All the truth in the world won't make any difference because they'll just justify. I did all of that. I understand, So, yes, you can sum that up with you have to be willing to change, and follow the truth. Not change to please people. Change because it's right.
Right. Change for the right motive.
Yeah, pleasing people is not loving at all. It's really, in essence, it's really not caring about other people. Because if I really care about you, I can't just please you. I can only do what I believe is truly best for you, even if that doesn't please you. If I just want to please you, I'm not loving you, I'm loving myself. Just meaning I'm pleasing you so you will love me. So I'm here for what I can get, not what I can give. If I really love you, then I want you to understand the truth, even if you don't like it, because I know the truth is best for you, even if you don't like me. That's what love does.
That's really good. So how would you describe the first few years of you and your wife being married? And how did God play a role in developing you and your wife's relationship, and how has he brought you closer together so far?
Yeah, so he's absolutely brought us closer together. The first few years for us were, I think pretty good and pretty normal. But just for clarity, we've hit some rough patches. In the book, The Right Fight, I dedicated one chapter to, just probably the worst fight we ever had. Not fist fight. I've never touched her, thank God. But I'm talking about verbal and the whole 9 yards. But just as an example, we were coming home from something one time, and we were driving together. She was in my truck with me, and my brother calls me on speakerphone. My brother he'd been looking at this house that he thought it would be a good idea for us to buy and fix it up and then flip it. But I hadn't talked to Tammy about it yet, and I wasn't hiding anything. I just didn't. I'm like, I'm not sure if I even want to do it. And if I bring it up to her, then we'll have to go through everything, and we're probably not even going to do it. So maybe I should have told her already. Maybe, I don't know. But anyway, he brings it up. And then in that conversation, he says some things that would lead her to believe that, like, I've already made up my mind. As I'm driving and he's talking, I'm all the blood's running out of my head because I'm like, oh my God, this is taking a bad turn, right? And we just had a conversation not long before about, making sure we all understand what's going on at the same time. And so he finally gets done. I hang up the phone, and she starts in like, yeah, I can't believe this. Like, you're actually going to buy a house, and you haven't said anything to me about it. I said, baby, no. I said, baby. I said, Tammy, no, that's you. I understand what that sounds like, but that's not what's going on. And then she's firing. Anyway, we start firing back and forth. And in this moment, we're both being selfish. And we just let it come off the hinges. And we're driving 70 miles an hour down the highway. It's not like either one of us can walk away. And it just turns into an all-out screaming match. We're screaming at each other. I'm wishing I could rip the steering wheel off the dashboard and shove it through the windshield. I mean, it's just like craziness. And can't even believe it. We get home, we don't talk, we don't say a word to each other. I'm mad, she's mad. I get up the next morning and she always makes me coffee. And my coffee's on the counter, and I'm thinking, I promise you I wouldn't have made her any. And so my first thought is, man, give a little bit to the dog, make sure it's not poison. I'm gonna get out of this alive, and so I drink my coffee, and a day later we still hadn't said another word to each other, and there's my coffee again, the next morning, and I'm like, okay, Lord help me, what's wrong with me, and what matters most to me, and Tammy left her family to be with me. She dedicated her life to me. And right now, all that's important to me is me. And how she talked to me, how she treated me, or whatever it was, all these different things. And so instead, it was about 3 days, I think, before, I went to her. I didn't know what to say or what to do. I just went and gave her a hug, and I thanked her for the coffee. And then we talked. And all I can tell you is that through that hurt, so when those things come along, one of two things can happen. We can love our way through them, or we can fail to love our way through them. And Amy started the path to us loving our way through it just with a cup of coffee. And I know she couldn't have wanted to make me that coffee, right? And then we ended up talking, and then after we talked, we both apologized. And then I would say I felt more in love with her than I did before that hurt came, before we got into it. So because we loved our way through it, love grew stronger through the hurt, and hurt's always going to be coming. The problem is that when we meet this hurt and we decide that we're going to put our foot down and nothing's going to move us, we're unwilling to change, we're unwilling to listen to the truth, we're unwilling to communicate, and we just stay stuck there. We don't love our way through the hurt, then love begins to die in our relationship. So we're either, love is always growing or it's dying. It's never just sitting there. And so when you love your way through those hurts, you ask, how does it grow stronger? Love grows stronger when hurt comes, if we love our way through it. Or it begins to die if we refuse to love. And sometimes, unfortunately, one person can choose to love and the other can refuse. And the best you can do is persevere and hope that, sooner than later they'll wake up and actually start loving.
Wow, that's crazy. And you said that fight happened within like the first couple years of your marriage, right? Just so I understand.
No, that was probably like year 25 now. It's probably year 22. So, and there was plenty that happened, along the way.
Wow.
That was just probably the worst one. That's at least from my memory, that was the worst one at year 22. But certainly some of those came up within the first year or two as well. I think we had more restraint, or for sure I did. That was the first time I ever just said, you know what, I don't care. Like, you're being so outrageous, I don't care. And I just let myself go, just scream top of my lungs, act like a total idiot. It's just,
right.
And that's just so unacceptable. It's so much wrong with that. But I did, she did, and then we repented, and we chose to love each other anyway, and love each other through it. Though I would say we failed to love each other that day, but then we chose to love each other after that. And love grew stronger through it. But no, that's happened, on smaller scales many times,
Right.
It may happen today when I get home from work, it's not this lovely peachy ride all the time, but for sure our home is mostly peaceful. And and self-control, and it gets better and better and better, and we both get better and better and better over time. That's why I say permanently under construction. We keep Christ first, and we know what's right and what's wrong, not based on what we feel, but based on what his word says and the truth of his word.
Right.
And now we know, not just based on what he said, but by applying that in our lives and seeing the fruit of it. And so it gets easier when you start seeing the fruit, because then you're like, wow, I believe by faith, but I also have a knowing,
right,
and an experience and a seeing, so.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it takes two, and selflessness, not selfishness.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's not about me. Like, when you ask me who I am in the beginning of this conversation, I say, Tammy's husband and my children's father. By that, what I mean is, it's not my responsibility to make sure that Tammy is a good wife. Right. It's my responsibility to make sure that I'm a good and loving husband, whether she is or not. I can't let how other people treat me change who I am. Jesus never let how people treated him change who he was.
Right.
He was loved, so he loved. And nothing anybody ever did to him kept him from loving. And so I can't be him, but I can be more like him, and more all the time. So my responsibility in my family is to love my wife and to love my children, not to make sure my wife and my children love me. Now, if I love them, I want them to live a loving life, but not for me, because it's best for them.
Definitely.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. It does. So how would you, I think you used the term, but it's definitely come up a lot, again, within the last year of marriage for myself. But the term that, like, you keep Christ at the center or the front of your marriage, how would you say that that's applicable? Like, how would one apply that in their marriage?
Well, first of all, why is that important? That I understand exactly what you're saying. I get everything you're saying, but it's taken me a long time to, like, usually when I heard somebody say, keep Christ at the front of your marriage, well, what does that even mean? Like, right. I don't understand. How am I supposed to do that? And why is it important? And how does it have any impact on me loving my family? Well, first of all, Jesus, God, is love. So if we put Jesus first, then that means we have to learn who he is. And what happens is when we learn who Christ is, we learn what love is. Like we all have this preconceived notion of who Christ is, or what love is, and it's always broken. We really don't understand what love really is. We think love is a feeling. We think it's giving this and getting that. We think all these crazy things, but that's not who Jesus is at all.
Right.
Like, he laid down his life for us, as I said before, not because of who we are, but so God doesn't love you because of who you are. And that's a good thing, because if he loved you because of who you are and you changed, he wouldn't love you anymore. Right?
Yeah.
He loves you because of who he is. Because he is love. He loves because he is love. Now, because he loves you, he doesn't want you staying selfish. Everything God does is for you. So when you come to understand, by putting Christ first, we come to understand who he really is and how much he loves us despite who we are, not because of who we are, despite all our sin, all our selfishness, our foolishness, and everything we deserve. He took our place on the cross for us. When we understand how much he loves us by putting him first, that's what happens when we do that. Then we understand what love is. Then we not only know how to properly love our families, our spouse, and our children. Through him and his Holy Spirit, we become empowered. We have the power to actually love our wife and our children, or our husband and our families. Mm-hmm. So it's not like Jesus wants you to put him first because it's best for him.
Right.
You know, me loving God doesn't help God. I mean, it probably blesses him to know that we love him, but it doesn't empower him or change him. You know, it's me loving God is for me. God wants me to love him because it's best for me. So when we come to understand his love and we know his love, now we know how to love our families. And so the way you do that is you read his word. Like you need to go read scripture. You know, if you don't know where to start, go start in the book of John, James, Philippians, Romans. You know, read the story of the prodigal son. You know, read the story of Joseph and see these things reveal the heart of God and who he really is. So we put him first so we can know him. Then once we know him, we realize the truth of what love really is. It's everything we were created for. And then we're positioned to be able to love our families. And when we love our families expecting nothing in return, then everything that we desire, just loving family, to be loved, all these other things chase us down. If we take care of love in our lives, it's like taking care of the roots on a tree. If you take care of the roots, the fruit takes care of itself. And we're always fighting for our fruit, making sure my family respects me, making sure my wife loves me, and we're killing the roots. You know, so the harder we fight, the worse it gets.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that. I like that perspective. I haven't heard it that way before. That's really helpful.
Yeah. I always say it's all Jesus, you know, because it's like literally it really is. You know, the more you're understanding, the more you want to know him. And the more you know him, the more love flows through you to other people. And that's your whole purpose in life. Like everything starts getting healthy.
With God being such a huge part of your marriage, how is it, do you think, that non-Christians or non-believers survive the marital status with all the challenges faced in marriage?
I have no idea. I would suggest that the only marriages that truly flourish are loving marriages. And there's only one way to have a truly loving marriage, and that is to have a truly selfless marriage. That two people who are truly there for each other. And, you know, sometimes, God's word tells us if you know love, you know God. If you don't know love, you don't know God. And I don't know, I mean, I'm not God, but if there are marriages that truly flourish and are truly loving and truly selfless, then maybe they know love. Maybe they just don't know his name is Jesus. You know?
Right.
I don't know, but I don't think I've ever seen a marriage or a relationship of any kind that was truly loving and selfless. I'm not saying they don't exist, you know, but that Christ wasn't a part of it.
Right.
And maybe he is sometimes, and they just don't know his name's Jesus, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it does seem pretty crazy sometimes. There's definitely marriages out there that I've seen myself that, like, wow, like, how are these people still together? Because, like, you don't really see any evidence of God in their life other than the possibility that, like you said, they know love, but they don't know his name is Jesus. But
yeah, well, if you don't see any evidence of true love in their lives, which then maybe if you went home, you'd find out it's not really a loving relationship if you followed them home. You know, maybe it's two people just enduring each other. They're both there for what they can get, and they calculate that it'd be worse to not be in the relationship than it would to be out of it.
right.
So it just kind of cohabitate and exist, you know. Unfortunately, there's way too much of that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But if true love exists in a relationship, then on some level, God's got to be there. You know, I don't think, and I'm not saying that we can make God anything we want. God is love, and he is who he is. But he knows the pureness of our hearts, you know. Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to say that I think sometimes we think we're loving, but our intentions aren't pure at all, then God's nowhere near us.
Right.
You know, when we call ourselves Christians or that we're doing Christian things, but if you really saw the intent of our hearts, and we usually know that, selfishness, you know.
Definitely.
And then sometimes there's actually a pureness of love, and I think God draws near to that, you know. But in the end, I mean, He is love, and His name is Jesus. I don't think there is love absent of Jesus. I just think sometimes people, it's possible that sometimes people know love but haven't figured out yet His name is Jesus. But if they keep knowing love and they keep following love, it all leads to Him. And then they will know.
Yeah, that's good. That makes sense. How has your perspective on marriage and dating relationships changed since being married?
I guess the biggest, the one thing that I didn't consider before I got married that is so important to me now, that really never once crossed my mind before I was married. There was a pretty significant, at least, change in my understanding of it. Was I never once considered, like, when I got married, I had a lot of selfish intentions, I would say, you know, so, but I never once considered, you know, would my wife be a good mother, you know? And I think a lot of times we don't think, hey, would this person be a good father, or would this person be a good mother? And then, you know, after being married and learning how much our children mean to us, and the value of having a loving mother, like seeing my wife love my children, or love our children, or God's children that we're responsible for now, is so important. And I'm so grateful that my wife loves our children. And I see, when I see that not happening, sometimes I'm just like, wow, that would wreck my life. You know, right. I would be so miserable. So I would say, you know, when you're looking for someone to spend your life with, if they're truly a loving person, they're going to love their children as well, you know, or if they're moving there. None of us are, like I said, perfect in love or anything else, but if they're humble enough and they're surrendering and not so ruled by fear that they won't follow the truth where it takes them, then if they really love you, they're going to love their children. But I'm so grateful my wife loves our children. And so more important to me than what kind of a wife I have is what kind of a mother my children have. And I never saw that coming.
That's true. I don't feel like, at least in the relationships that I've, you know, talked to people or witnessed, that doesn't seem to be a consideration at all. You know, either people aren't planning to have kids, or it's just so far off in the future that they don't think about it.
Right.
It's very true.
Yeah, that's important. Unfortunately, most relationships I see, most people are focused on, they're trying to find the person that will give them what they want. Like they many times they'll even have this list of what they're looking for in another person. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But if you look at the list is all for them.
Right.
Like, I want a kind spouse, not so they're kind, but so that I get treated kindly.
Right. Yeah.
So if we have a list of what we're looking for in someone else, and that list is all for me, we are going to be the problem in the relationship. And our responsibility is not to make sure we're loved. Our list, if we're going to have a list, it needs to be what we're looking for in someone else, because it's going to ultimately be best for them and best for our family. And you know, I want my spouse to be kind. I'm not saying I don't. But love is not what we desire. It's not normally found in what we desire or even what we do. Love is normally revealed in why we desire something or why we do what we do. So I can desire that my wife is kind, so that I am treated kindly. That's selfishness. It's not love. I can desire that my wife is kind because it's best for her. That's love. My wife's like the best at it. I mean, she really is. Like, if I start getting stupid and selfish, I mean, all I talk about on social media is love. All I've talked about for 20 years since I've dug deep into this topic is the word love and what it really is and all this stuff. And I might go home today and Tammy will look at me and say, Kenny, you talk about this love, all this love stuff all the time. Just look at you right now.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, you're right. And I'm sorry, but that's because she loves me, so.
That kind of
stop selfishness long before, for your sake, long before selfishness will stop it for its own sake.
So, kind of leading into the next question with what you said, you mentioned something about relationships. You see a lot of people, writing down lists and stuff. In general, what direction do you see most dating or marriage relationships heading these days, and what could fix or prevent whatever problems they have?
Well, I guess kind of like I was just saying, most people are in a relationship for what they can get, and they're looking for relationships for what they can get, and so they tolerate a lot of foolishness and selfish things because they calculate that it's worth it in order to get what they want, and that's what gets everyone in trouble. And that's why relationships start off so friendly and nice, but they're not kind at all. Like, so we can be real nice to someone because we want something they have. But if we're nice to someone who's being selfish, that's not kind. Like, that's as far from kind as you can get. If someone is being selfish, like my wife isn't nice, my wife loves me. Like, I'm so grateful that she loves me. And I, one of the ways that she loves me is that if I'm being selfish, as kindly as she can, she tells me that I'm being selfish. Now, that may not seem nice, but it's very loving. Mm-hmm. And so I think that your question about, where most relationships are and how they get off, headed in the wrong direction, you just got two people who are there for themselves. They're afraid of not being loved. They're afraid of not finding someone. They're afraid of being alone forever. They're afraid of all these different things. And then they finally find somebody that they feel like they can be around or have a relationship with. They're so afraid of losing that they become very self-centered. They're self-focused. And so they tolerate all kinds of things they shouldn't tolerate. And then when they finally take a stand against everything that was selfish, they don't take the stand for the person they say they love. They take the stand for themselves. And so, we live in a world that loves itself. And I get myself in hot water when I say this all the time, and my brothers always tell me, Kenny, people don't really understand what you're saying when you say this. But I think it's so important to say. And maybe if you don't understand it when I say it, maybe you could go away and think about it, and you could start understanding it, because it's life-changing truth. But the truth is, the world says, unless you love yourself, you can't love anyone else. So you have these relationships getting started with two people who actually love themselves. The truth is, if you love yourself, you can't love anyone else. Because love puts someone first. You can't put you first and me first. Right. I have to choose. And so if I love my wife, I put her first. Now I have to understand, if I really put her first, I only want what is best for her. That's what love desires. Love desires what is truly best for you without regard for itself. That's what Jesus did. He, with no regard for his own life, he laid his life down on the cross for us, even though we had earned it. So if I'm going to love my wife, I have to do what I believe is truly best for her without regard for myself. And I can't put me and her first at the same time. But the good news is, no, loving her may require sacrifice and may be difficult for me to love her or to live a loving life. It's the best possible thing I can do for myself. I mean, living a loving life it virtually ensures your fruitfulness. You know, it ensures a healthy family, it ensures healthy relationships, it ensures healthy businesses, it even helps you be a better athlete, you know?
Right.
I mean, it helps everything. But if we live the loving life so that we can be fruitful, we don't love anymore. So if I love you, so if I love my wife for what I can get, I don't love my wife, I love me. I'm using love as a currency to get from my wife what I want. If I really love my wife, it's for no regard for me at all. So modern day relationships, the world of psychology, the world in general, just nonstop preaches self-love that is rooted in fear that destroys relationships.
I definitely
I know that's confusing. My brother tells me all the time, but it's the truth.
No, I definitely understand that. That does make a lot of sense. I think he's right with people not, maybe some people wouldn't understand it, but just people don't want to hear that, fear never wants to be condemned. So
that's right.
For sure.
That's right.
But yes, that does make sense.
That's when you asked earlier, what do we need to look out for in relationships or be careful of, if we're so controlled by our fears that the truth spoken to us only comes across to us as judgmental, self-righteous, all of these things, that's a major red flag. I don't know how the only way that person, if I'm that person and everything comes across to me as judgmental and self-righteous and I just totally reject it and attack the person, there's nothing you can do for me. Like the best thing you could do for me if I was there, most loving thing you could do for me would be to just say, you know what, I'm sorry, I can't help you, and just step away because you're not going to help me keep being selfish.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so those are the things those are kind of deal killers,
Yeah, for sure. So if you could go back and tell yourself, your younger self, any piece of advice, whether it's, marriage or dating or whatever sort of advice, what would it be?
I don't know if I could have got it through my thick head, I probably had to learn the hard way like I did, but I would just say, stop and ask yourself one simple question, and that is, what is love? And it's not what you think it is. It's not a feeling. The feeling of love is the fruit of love. But love is a decision to do what's truly best for someone else without regard for yourself. So I think the most important question, not just younger, but every age, anyone can ever ask themselves, for sure, the most important question I ever asked myself was, what is love? And when I asked myself that question, I knew that I didn't know the answer. And so I spent 20 plus years, digging and trying to find it, and understand it. And I really, when I dug in deeper, I thought that I would figure it out, within a couple of weeks. And then within a few months, when I felt like I had some sense of what it was, I figured I'd be done with it, shortly thereafter and on to other things. But it's like a giant onion, it's like every time you put one layer back, there's another layer.
Yeah.
That underneath that is more insane truth that can radically change your life. And so yeah, you need to question what love really is, because that is your purpose in life. Your whole purpose in life is to love and to be loved. And if we don't know what love is, we try to fill our purpose with all kinds of other stuff, and it always breaks. It never works. If we get love right, all the other things will fall into place. We get God first in our life, and He'll lead us and direct us about where we should be. It's not easy. You know, love is very simple, but boy, is it not easy. It's going to cost you something, but it's never going to cost you more than what failing to love is going to cost you.
Yeah, that's really good. I feel like that's definitely an overlooked part of relationships. Like you said, people are so focused on themselves and like the fear of what not being loved is going to be like, that they kind of forget like the whole purpose, you know, like that loving others is going to give you so much more. And then, you know, like you said, question themselves, like, what is it? Am I giving it to other people so that I can get something out of it? Because that's not actually what love looks like. I think there's, like you said earlier on, like there's a misconception of what love actually is. Like that word is so misused so often. It's like that question I feel like is super important for people to ask themselves, but not just like for the reason of relationship wise, but also just like, what is the meaning amongst like all the 75 that we've been given in this culture today? Like loving, it does not mean loving yourself first. Like you were saying, like you can only put one person first, and that's not truly loving other people. That's only benefiting yourself.
Right. That's right. And love it why we do something, it's not what we do, it's why we're doing it. And just a quick example. So, and this is the one used most often to support self-love. And when I first started, I thought, wow, maybe I'm wrong. You know, maybe I need to rethink this. But here's the example. So, say, you know, the crowd that says, and this came from a pastor in the church, extremely well-known author of many books. But anyway, his message was that unless you love yourself, you can't love anyone else. And this was his example. Example was you're on an airplane, oxygen goes away, the masks fall down. What do you have to do? You have to put your mask on first so you can then help the people around you put their mask on. And then he says, so the point being, unless you love yourself, you can't love anyone else. And my first thought was, wow, that kind of makes sense. But then I remember love is not what we do, love is why we do it. So I would argue that if you put your mask on first, so that if your why for putting your mask on first is so that you can help other people put their mask on, that was not self-love. That was love. Like, it was for them, not for you. But the question you need to ask yourself is, if one mask falls down between you and your neighbor, are you going to put it on? Or are you going to help them put it on? And if you're going to put it on so that you get a mask, that is self-love. If you help them put it on, that is love. And if y'all share the mask, you love each other. But the simple fact that you're putting your mask on so that, you know, that you can put other people's on, if you may say that, but God sees the heart. And so we need to ask ourselves, you know, why am I putting my mask on first? And is it to make sure I get a mask? If it's to make sure I get a mask, that's not love at all. That is self-love. But if it's to help other people put their mask on, that's not self-love either. That's love. So love is the why behind the what. And yeah, if there's one mask, I got to choose who gets it. And I don't make my mind up about who's going to get the mask when the mask falls down. My mind was made up before I ever sat down next to you and then one single mask fell between us. I had already decided in my own life who comes first. And if I had decided I come first, and that's how I lived most of my life, and I was really good. Like, I would see the mask dropping before you even knew the oxygen was going away, and I would have it and have it on, and I wouldn't even look at you. You know, that's how selfish I was. That's self-love. But slowly, Christ is teaching me that it's not me first. It's him and others. And I hope, you know, I've never been in a situation, but I hope that if the mask fell down between me and you, that I'd help you put it on. And that's love. That's the difference.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that example too, because I feel like that's like you said, that's the most used or the most common for sure. And I have had that before and kind of thought that, like, How does that actually apply in the world of love? So I really appreciate that explanation. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Why you do what you do. And, God sees us inside out. We see each other outside in, but we have a responsibility to see each other inside out. I mean, fear sees each other outside in, but love has a responsibility to see each other inside out. And God sees it perfectly. He knows our hearts, and we usually know our own hearts too. We don't always know them completely, but we know why we're putting the mask on. I'll promise you that.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, that brings us to the end of my questions that I had prepared. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for calling, Marilyn. I appreciate
Absolutely.
your time.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you later, hopefully. See you on more Facebook and Instagram Reels.
Yeah, I'm going to be out there.
Okay, sounds good.
Beating my banner, yeah.
All right. We'll talk to you later, Kenny. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.